Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to the Institute for Personal Development, Kriya Yoga Ashram, where total consciousness is the new frontier.
Kriya Yoga is union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices to initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's Talk Consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of the Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty good today. How about you?
Well, I'm doing pretty good today. Thanks for asking. And we want to thank you all for tuning in. Today on The Voice of Yoga, we have dedicated 12 shows to discussing the 12 signs of the Zodiac as a map leading to spiritual understanding. Each week focuses on the respective sign as an archetype used in the process of an individual becoming divine. Listen this week as we explain the function of Taurus, based on the simple observation, what surrounds us is within us. These shows will explore why divine law cannot function in your experience if you are not conscious of its presence. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. We are talking consciousness. Join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance to get the light in your soul and experience divine identity. So, Swami, the title of today's show is 12 Signs of Spiritual Truth, Part 2. And we said we were going to talk about Taurus. So why don't you get us started?
Yeah, well, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to use the Zodiac kind of like as a template for the unfolding of the experience of the understanding of ourselves as eternal spiritual beings. And so Taurus is the second sign of the Zodiac. 2 weeks ago, we did Aries. And now we're going to look at Taurus. And the key phrase of Taurus is, I have. As we drill down with this statement, we see the deeper meaning of the second sign of the Zodiac. If there is but one I am in this universe, only one divine life, then it stands to reason that I am everything. And so oftentimes I have has the connotation of possessions, things that we acquire, things that we think we own. When you are starting to use your astrology as a spiritual science, you're really starting to look towards the visible and tangible and the invisible and tangible to give us clues to the truth of our being, which is really invisible and intangible. And so Taurus is really associated with the second house, which is values, and it has a lot to do with what it is that we acquire, our possessions. And in the framework of starting to understand ourselves spiritually, we want to see, well, what is it that we think is valuable? Things that are corruptible, that things that can, in time, fall apart, things that can lose value in time, are they more valuable than this changeless state of being? More valuable than the divine law of life? And so whatever it is that we esteem as valuable is what we're going to be drawn to.
I wonder if we can talk more about the I am and the I have. Can we drill down some more, especially on the I am and what it has to do with Taurus?
Well, I am has to do with Aries. That's the key phrase of the sign, and we talked about that. Or maybe even a better use of the science of astrology. To really get a grasp of what it is that we're trying to do here is we're trying, again, to use what surrounds us as an indicator of what it is that we possess in consciousness. And it starts with an identity. And if I identify with my physical body and I think that this form is me, then I would be in what would be called error, because I have a false sense of who I truly am. And then as we start to move into Taurus, the second house, I have, most of us really identify with the things that we own or we think we own. And in this model, you really want to start with a clear understanding of what the I of my being really is. And then if I have a clear understanding of myself as spirit, formless, eternal, infinite, then I have the kingdom of heaven on earth now. But if I identify with the things visible and tangible or the things that are invisible and tangible, then I have a limited sense of who I am, which gives me a very different platform to start to live out from than if I start from the truth of my being.
So can we say that I have a relationship with my divinity, therefore I am?
We'll see, if I have a relationship with my divinity, then the implication there is that there is a me and a divinity. And that immediately drops you down into a belief in two powers. And from that platform, you are now hypnotized by the world mind. But if you do not accept that as your identity, and you realize there is only one life in this universe, and how is it possible for there to have individuality and at the same time this universality? And the way that it works is the connection is found in the thought unity between divine mind and what is called the real person. And in the framework of that description, you start to see that the individual is really the idea that comes from the one divine mind. So the one divine mind, considering its own content, which is basically what we identify as ourselves as separate, is really just a thought in this divine mind.
Swami, I see in our notes that we have a quote from Joel S. Goldsmith that has the quote in there, I have, and wondering if maybe now would be a good time to let our listeners in on that.
Yeah, the quote from Joel Goldsmith, and this was from The Awakening of Mystical Consciousness. The moment there is in your mind a thought of getting or receiving, even from God, you are once again back in the state of mortality. Only when you are understanding the, and this is in quotes, I have, and letting you lose yourself, is that you will be in a state of consciousness. You are steeped in the state of spiritual awareness as long as you are aware that good is flowing through you into the world. The moment the thought of getting or receiving enters, even though it is worthy or deserving, then you withdraw from the spiritual light. And that's the end of the quote. And so this is kind of a very different way of looking at things that we're talking about here. And a better use of the word I have really is that when you have spiritual identity, you absolutely have no need. There is absolutely nothing that can ever be added or taken away from you because you are in the perfection of being. What's really interesting about that is that even if you have a sense of material identity, even if you are living out from seeing yourself as a physical body, to have that mental state really makes your ability to get what you want that much easier than for somebody who has the mental stance or the inner landscape that has the feeling of, I don't have, I lack. And so even on all levels, if when you start to employ this, you start to see that there's benefit to it.
Because I get from this quote that we should not want for anything getting or receiving from God or the material world because it pulls you into that.
Right. And that pulls you back into a belief in two powers. That separates you from the truth of your being. And then your identity falls down into material identity or even mental identity. And from that level, you're under the law of karma. You have a belief in two powers. And at the very best, what you'll be able to do is change finite bad to finite good. And that's a very different approach to our lives, but most of us would be very happy just to maybe get more of the pleasures and profits from the world and the human experience. But if you really are on a serious quest for spiritual understanding and the benefits that come with that, then you have to go beyond physical and mental.
I've been wanting to ask you this since we've been talking this morning. And does this mean that the law of attraction, is that what they're talking about when if you're using mental means? Because I think that's what law of attraction is. You're using mental means to get those things into your life. So we need to overcome that desire for law of attraction.
Well, in reality, you can actually employ the law of attraction very successfully to attain spiritual selfhood. And the Bible gives us that clue when it says to ask in my name. See, if we are in spiritual identity, the like attracts like kicks in. And that is what lifts us into the understanding that we are an eternal spiritual being. But in order for us to do that, we must know ourselves in the way that we are known by the Creator, which is spiritual identity. But like we have been saying in a lot of these shows, is that whatever it is that we desire is what it is that we are going to bring into our consciousness. And so if we are attracted to the things that are visible and tangible, then that's what you will attract. That's what you will draw into your consciousness. If you are attracted to things that are invisible but tangible, then you will bring in thoughts, and you will bring in concepts and beliefs and feelings and things of that nature. But if you are attracted to what is invisible and intangible, then you will bring spirit into your consciousness.
Well, this is a good place to pause to hear a word from our sponsors. So listeners, we'll be back with you in just a few moments. Kriya Theory 2 is a unique and revolutionary practice and forum designed to facilitate the growth process in human development. Apotheosis is a real experience and has an evidence procedure. You cannot lead someone to permanent change by doing for them what they must do themselves. Personal accountability and responsibility are the foundation of Kriya Yoga Theory 2. You must be engaged and devoted. Prana power brings virtue to overcome fear, wisdom to overcome ignorance, purpose to overcome selfishness, enthusiasm to overcome laziness. Kriya Yoga is a path of action, knowledge, and devotion. These sessions are a celestial positioning system to guide the individual into union with the divine. For more information or to sign up for your next session online, go to www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste. Welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. So, Swami, I wonder if we can get back to the astrology and about the zodiacal signs. Can you give us a bit more detail about the Taurus?
Yeah, I can. But I think what I'd like to do now, though, is talk a little bit about just what it is that we're trying to do here, because in astrology, each zodiacal sign can be looked at holographically as a microcosm of the macrocosm. Again, that the small and the simple reflects the large and the complex. And in astrology, they use things like the duad. And the duad breaks each sign into 2.5 degree segments, beginning with the sign we are in. And then another thing that they use is what's called the decanate, which breaks signs into 10 degree segments. And the reason for this is everything is a different aspect of the same thing. That in creation, that this one power reveals itself in just about every level, just like the workings of a cell is identical to the workings of an organism, and the workings of an atom is identical to the workings of the solar system. And so when you break each sign down to 2.5 segments, so say, for example, your first duad of any zodiacal sign is going to be that sign. So Aries would be Aries. And then the next duad would be Taurus. The next one would be Gemini. The next one would be Cancer, and so on and so on. And so when you move to Taurus, your first duad is going to be Taurus. And then it's going to be Gemini, Cancer, Leo, until you get to Pisces, and then the next one will be Aries. But what we're starting to see is that everything has the qualities of that moment, of everything that is found in the one universe is found in everything. And that's, I think, a very helpful tool that we can start to employ when we start to use birth charts. And especially in this model, when we're trying to move or just use what's visible and tangible to give us clues as to what it is that I hold in my consciousness.
Now, there could be a lot of us where all these clues are surrounding us, but we don't have an awareness that they're even clues. So how do we look around us and say, yes, that's a clue, I should learn from that, or I should know something from that?
Yeah, well, that all comes with the instruction. if you understand that spirit is cause, that spirit is the fundamental fountainhead for existence, as opposed to the way most of us look at it, and we think that there is life in matter. But in this model, if you start to use spirit as cause and really start to understand that there is no life in matter, that all life is spirit, and in fact there is no matter, that everything is just spirit revealing itself as the appearance of something, which is just something that appears in human consciousness. And what we develop is we learn how to develop beyond our five senses, and we start to understand ourselves through spiritual or soul sense. Probably one of the better ways of really coming to understanding about this, it would be to use scripture, because those are the books that people have been using for thousands of years to help us experience this spiritual identity that we are trying to awaken into.
And astrology can also help us awaken in the same way. Isn't it just another method?
Well, yeah, it's another method, but I just look at it as it's another map, and how you're going to use that is of the utmost importance. And like I said, everything happens on three levels in astrology, that you have a physical, a mental, and a spiritual. We are addressing the creating, the sustaining, and the dissolving forces of the universe. And so always using the things that we can see to give us clues to the source of everything, which is invisible and intangible, the void or the nothing out of which everything comes.
Now we know that Taurus in the sign is the bull. What can we learn from that?
Yeah, again, I think what I would like to do is maybe revert back to Alice Bailey's book with the labors of Hercules. And Taurus, the labor in her book, is the capture of the Cretan bull. And the message for this particular task is the potency of desire. Like attracts like. And what we desire is what we become. And the key to the initiation is to desire the void or the nothing, or the way that the Bible presents it is to love God with your heart, your soul, and your mind. That's a great way of being able to use the forces that are visible and tangible to achieve spiritual accomplishments.
Now that phrase, I know you said that before, love God with your heart, your soul, and your mind, but what does it look like when you do those three things?
Well, you desire spirit. You desire what is invisible, intangible, but you are desiring that which is eternal, absolute harmony, absolute love, absolute life. And it's not life that ends up in a grave. It is eternal life. But to desire it, to love it, that it's not just something that you can memorize or you can talk about. You must feel it in the core of your being.
So it's pretty strong words then, to love God with your heart, soul, and mind. Like you say, you just don't say it, but you have to feel it and you have to become that.
Yeah, and I've heard people talk about ice cream that way. And the thing is whatever it is that you internalize in your consciousness as the symbol that you use to produce the feeling that you're happy, that you're special, that you're good enough. When you are relying on the sustaining infinite, it just gives you that much more of a return, because you don't believe in something that has no power, has no life of its own. But you are now in tandem with something that is backed by divine principle.
Well, I'd like to get back and talk more about Taurus and maybe the constellations of Taurus.
Yeah, again, in Alice Bailey's book, she uses the constellation. The first one in Taurus is Orion, the three kings, will, love, and intelligence. And then Uranus, the river of the judge, which is, I think, a pretty interesting symbol in and of itself, especially when we hear so much about not to judge, unless you can judge righteously. And again, what is meant by these terms? And the last one, the third constellation that she includes, is Auriga, which is the charioteer leading forward. And so judging righteously in this model really is no judgment. Why is it no judgment? Because we are moving from a belief in two powers, a belief in good and bad, into the one power of divine unity, where there is only one law, there is only one truth. And to judge righteously is to recognize the truth, the perfection of everything that comes into your awareness.
Well, I see in the notes here that we have a note that talks about the levels of consciousness and what is my level of consciousness. I know you've been talking about, well, that would determine what you desire. So can we talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, what I am attracted to is going to really determine what it is that I will become. And we had said that a little bit earlier, that if you are attracted to things visible and tangible, then you will basically be of a lower animal nature. If you are attracted to things that are invisible but tangible, thoughts, ideas, concepts, you will be of, again, an equally low human nature. But if you are attracted to what is invisible and intangible, you will be of a divine nature, which is optimal in this model, especially once we start to see the benefit of understanding ourselves spiritually, understanding that there is no separation in this universe, that this universe is being held, controlled, and governed by the divine law of life, which is absolute harmony, absolute love, and absolute perfection.
So getting back to what we're attracted to, for example, if we love silence as opposed to stimulation, there has to be the right kind of silence. Right.
And I think that's why we have talked about this. There are three modes of mortal thought, which we'll actually go into more next week when we talk about Gemini. Because there is a difference between absolute silence and the absence of noise. And the difference is that one comes under the law of karma. The absence of noise is still a belief in two powers, whereas absolute silence is a belief in one power. And more what we want to start to see is the benefit of this allegiance to the belief in the one divine power of this universe.
Well, I think we need to start closing down our show for this morning. So listeners, please visit the website, www.ipdtransform.com. And don't forget, Swami also has a Wednesday webinar. It's for free for everybody. It's at noon, and you can access that. And also, 3/4 of the way down on that homepage, you'll see that section entitled Swami Says Recent Posts, and there's a lot of the shows there listed that you can click on to continue your learning experiences. So, Swami, do you have any other final thoughts about today's program?
Well, I would like to encourage everybody to appraise their own values and what it is that they think is valuable, and hopefully that they will love the silence and the stillness that brings them the understanding of themselves as an eternal spiritual being. And with that, I'll wish everybody a good day. Namaste.
And thank you for listening to our program, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton, along with Swami Jayananda, signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.